Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Making Your Mark podcast. I'm your host, Mark Bundang, and today we have a very special guest. She's someone that I've known sometime in my life, fairly early on, but we really made a recent connection. I've followed her on social media, particularly on LinkedIn, and I probably shouldn't say this, but in the lead up to this podcast, I said one of the things that really attracted me to call her onto this podcast is that when I see her presence on LinkedIn, it's like sunshine. So you know what? Without further ado, I'd like to introduce Hannah Flostrand. Hi, Hannah.
Hey, Mark, it is such a pleasure, and I am very honored that I'm showing up on your feed as sunshine. I that's what I aspire to do.
Oh, good, good. Well, you know what? If I'm seeing it, I'm sure a lot of other people are seeing it, which kind of lends itself well to where you've kind of made your mark, your profession, where you are. For the audience, would you be able to give a bit of a background on yourself?
Sure. You're catching me at a pivotal point in my professional life. I am shifting from the realm of higher education, where I've been for a number of years, and merging into the immigration space. I finished my studies at Queen's University for the graduate diploma in immigration and citizenship law, and I am shifting into working as an immigration consultant from years of experience as a career educator in higher education. So it's an interesting space for me. So I'm really intrigued in our further conversation.
And I often say this a lot in the Making Your Mark podcast and in my writing as well. It's very common across all guests. Careers, like life, are never a straight line. You know, there's always some sort of a zigzag or going from left to right. So maybe you can kind of tell the audience a little bit about your journey from, I guess, maybe what you studied to where you are now.
Absolutely. I'm originally from Montreal. I'm now based in Vancouver. And when I was in university, I studied human resources management at Concordia University. And funny enough, I have never worked directly in human resources, but I feel like I've done work that is tangentially connected, but never in the HR realm specifically. And truly, I'm a believer that, as you've identified, careers are not a linear thing. It is a myth that I will bust and the hill I will die on. That very few people start off studying in one particular domain and actually end up practicing in that specific field. And that is a good thing because we bring such a range of experiences. So yes, from studying human resources management in university, happened to land in a position in the university, first as a tour guide, and then in admissions and recruitment to my university. And the rest of my professional life has been in higher education. And I always thought, once you graduate from university, you're supposed to leave university to go into the real world. And my real world has been post-secondary. So I didn't realize that would be my professional path. And now, as I said, I'm kind of shifting, but followed my curiosities and where it's led me so far. So it's truly not a linear path.
Ah, okay. And there's an element of time there. I mean, how long has your journey been since from your bachelor's to the end? I guess you're at a transition point, but how long is that?
I've been in higher education for over 20 years. So working in admissions, recruitment. When I moved to BC, I landed a role in academic advising, and that opened up doors to explore career development. And that has been my space in the last maybe 10 years. And so it's really been, I think, organic. Like I've just followed, again, my curiosities to, conversations that have caught my attention. And so my interest in career development started off when I started working at SFU and being an academic advisor for students looking to get into the business faculty at the university, then led to conversations of, what do I do with my degree? So career development became just a common thread now in the roles that I've been attracted to. So from academic and career development to now immigration and career development. So that has been my happy space. And so that's been, the through line through my roles lately.
I think one of the things that you mentioned there was the word curiosity. Now,
Yes.
would you describe yourself a little bit more curious than others?
I think only me as a reference point, I think I'm curious. I don't know more or less than others, but realize humbly that I am ignorant of many things. I don't know a
Mhm.
lot of things about many professions, so I'm always curious to learn. For example, I remember attending a Women in Data Science conference a few months ago. I was definitely not the smartest person in the room because I was awed by the wisdom, intelligence, and knowledge in that room. So I love being that person in the room where I get to hear from folks who are top of their field, top of their particular domain and specialty, and just to learn from them. And just recognizing there's so many places that I can be, and the rooms that I can sit in, or the tables that I can sit at, and just absorb and learn from others, so that I can take that information and maybe share it to folks in my ecosystem who might benefit from that knowledge.
Okay, so this is an interesting part about curiosity. You never know where it takes you, right? It certainly reveals itself only as you satiate that curiosity. And
Right.
so you mentioned in your experience that, you've kind of discover when you go to that kind of event. And then what I love about it is that you're saying you take it to other places. You take what you've learned and you apply it. What kind of benefit has come out of being able to share the benefits of satiating your curiosity?
I think it helps to bridge gaps so another event that I've recently been at, actually, there were two this past weekend.
Yeah.
So there's one called Tech Two Step. It's a local organization here in Vancouver that is helping elevate newcomers to Vancouver in the tech space and helping them make new connections, authentic connections in the tech space, potentially for job opportunities and just to build community. And that's a big one for me in the sense of I've been watching them for a while and recognizing, like, I don't know anything tech. I'm not a tech person, but I know who people may be able to connect with. So to answer your question, I think the opportunity to share knowledge helps to normalize the fact that there's a lot of newcomers to Vancouver or newcomers to Canada in general, and helping them make connections that there are other folks who are in similar situations or who may have already established themselves professionally and want to give back. So finding community with folks who are either in the same situation and looking to expand their network is one. And just it tickles my brain. It brings me joy to be able to share if there's something new that I've learned that could be of benefit to my community, to my ecosystem, to whoever who might be on LinkedIn and connected to me. I'm like, here's information. Some of it may help, some of it may not. Pick and choose what works best for you.
It's interesting because a lot of people who get the joy from sharing and from helping others, they really, when it's really selfless, you see it. There's nothing that they expect in return, but the joy of sharing with others and helping others. And that kind of brings me a little bit. I do want to explore a little bit more about your immigration,
Sure.
migration to immigration. Haha.
Nice. Nice play.
Yeah, it's just I'm curious. I mean, you mentioned that, like, just as an example, like a tech for
Check the
people.
step. Yeah, it's an
Yeah, tech to
organization
step. Yeah,
locally here. Yeah, in Vancouver.
and you mentioned that they're for people that are coming to this country as well. Is that, did I
Mhm.
get that right?
I
Yeah.
think it's a mixture. It meets a few different demographics. Folks who are new to Vancouver, new to Canada. It was started by a group of women who wanted to change the conversation of networking. Networking can be a very daunting activity, and especially for folks who are new to Canada, what does it even mean to network? And so it doesn't have to be so formal. And so these amazing folks who created this organization are saying, like, let's change the conversation. So it's literally a walk around Science World, which is a very visible landmark in Vancouver. And so it was such a
Hmm.
lovely conversation. It was a natural conversation to chat with people and learn about them, and they got to learn a little bit about me, and it was a very natural exchange.
Does it play a little bit into your career transition at this point? Is it very much related, or?
I mean, the organization or the activity of networking?
Well, the activity of networking, actually, that's a
Mm.
good one.
It is absolutely hand in hand with my career shift because so having been in higher education for over 2 decades was there's a little bit of anxiety in my own heart of shifting into a different career. So before I even started the immigration program through Queens, I started reaching out to folks in my network and tried to expand my network of practitioners in the immigration field so I can understand what are the latest trends, especially with technology, especially with AI. I wanted to hear from folks who are already in the field to understand, biggest challenges, what might be, as I said, trends that might be with technology, or where do they see growth and opportunity in this field. And for me, the field isn't just like, of course, make money so I can take care of my family, but I'm drawn to this profession because it feels like and years will tell me if this is true or not, that this is a field that will allow me to continue feeding my curiosity because immigration policies are constantly changing. Nothing stays status quo for far too long. So it'll keep me on my toes. It'll keep me giving me the ability to keep learning and researching what are new policies, what might be programs of benefit to people coming to Canada, or who might be the right candidates for particular programs in the future. So it's kind of self feeding kind of profession that will allow me to keep learning, which is what I'm hungry for.
Okay. So you're satiating your own curiosity by and learning, but at the same time, you're also uh, helping those who need it, right? Like and making a living doing it, right? So
That is the hope. That is the hope.
that's it. We have to because we have to make a living because that's how we sustain our lives and stuff like that. So I don't
But
see anything wrong with that.
and as you said, it really is filling a higher purpose for me of like adding value to conversations. Yes, money will be made eventually, through the services I hope to provide in the future, but really, how can I help? How can I connect with the folks who need this kind of information to make sure that their transition to Canada, their transition professionally is as smooth as possible. That is my intention.
Uh, You speak of transitions. So immigration, those who immigrate to this country, obviously they experience a big transition. But for you, I do have a really good question for you. It's because
Yeah,
many people, including myself, I have asked my question, if I'm not happy with where I am now, or I feel like there's something missing and I need to find it, how do you find it? How do you know where to go? Is that something that you've thought of?
absolutely. And I think in your conversations with the guests that you've invited on your show so far, may help to illuminate. You are drawn to stories, it seems. So part of when I work with my former students at Langara, one of the crucial conversations that I have with them is what brings you joy? What experiences can you remember that really, have an emotional tie for you that bring you joy, that spark something of like I really feel good or I'm in the flow. It could be very challenging work or it could be challenging activities, but it's something that you lose track of time because you're just in the moment. Those are activities that must mean something for you. And so, taking inventory, taking stock of when those occurrences have happened, I think are crucial as a reflection of maybe that means something. So, just as an example, I thought I would be, when I was a younger person, a backup dancer for Janet Jackson or Justin Timberlake. That never materialized, which is totally
No.
fine. But what I recognized is I am at ease in front of the public. I did
Mm,
Filipino folk dancing as a teenager and loved being in the spotlight, but not necessarily just to be in the spotlight. I realize in retrospect, connecting the dots, that I'm at ease facilitating sessions, workshops, and I didn't realize that would come in handy as an educator in higher education. So
mm.
that's the kind of tie that I'm realizing, I guess only in retrospect, that like, of course, I've had that love or that facility since I was a young person. So I would suggest, going back in your history of what has brought you joy, what has sparked just that, moment
Mm.
of excitement in you, and maybe that's shine a light on what you are drawn to.
That's interesting. And I do want to pull on that thread a little bit. It's because when I graduated in 2000. I'll tell you how old I really am. But in 2003, I had been working in a field that was like I graduated with chemistry. So for me, I worked in the field in pharma, which is sort of close to that. And I spent most of my time thinking, how do I get out of this? And I read this book called "What Color Is Your Parachute?" At the time.
Classic.
You know it, eh? Okay, yeah, yeah. So yeah, one of the exercises at the end of the book is just you write 7 success stories. So, what skills do you have in common out of those 7 stories that kind of draws you to where you need to be? This is not about me, but I just wanted to say that it's true. You know, you do have to take stock. Do you have a moment where you kind of you threw some spaghetti on the wall and then you tried to see which one stuck and then you realize it didn't?
Yes, yes. Actually, it was during the pandemic. I was okay. So I think you and the audience watching this show will remember. I think it's like embedded in stone for me. March 13th, 2020 was a date
Mm.
that the world closed and the world kind of shut down for the next year and a half to 2 years. There was a job posting at my former institution that caught my attention because at that point in my life, I thought the pinnacle of my professional career would be to return to my previous employer at a particular job. And so I applied for the job. I got called for interview. I did the interview, and in a deep moment of reflection, I had to realize and come to terms with the fact that no, that role is not a fit where I was at that point in my life. So my little one was still very little. I was in the midst of a master's program, and I could not give the 150% that this new role would require me to do. So I actually had to return to the folks who were interviewing me and remove myself from the competition. And really sit with that moment of like, did I just step away from, where my professional growth was supposed to go to? It took me 2 lessons because I saw another posting for the same organization in August of 2020. And I went through the same exercise again of applying, getting called for interview, and interviewing. These folks love me and care for me, and I still have very good relationships with both teams who interviewed me. But the second time around, when I did this activity again, I sat with the person who interviewed me and just kind of a very brief conversation of like, they didn't see if I was necessarily fit, and I had to
Mm.
realize that I was not a fit. It was not a good time in my life, and I had to be okay with it. To recognize like that is no longer true measurement of my professional success is not just this job title. It is not, there was a wrong season in my life. It might have been the right job pre-COVID, but it was no longer a match. So I really, it felt weird to walk away from what I thought was the pinnacle of my professional career. So, and it wouldn't have been a good fit. Like I had to really come to that realization. So it was a very important reflection for me. And had I gone that career path, I don't know if I would have, if the doors would have opened up to investigate immigration consulting, because I would have been going down another path. And so, yeah, truly in reflection, am I realizing that's what I needed to do? And I'm glad that I listened to my gut. It took me 2 lessons, but I'm glad that I finally heard what was internally building up of like, this is no longer mine. It's not for me to follow, and it has served me well.
I'm relieved to hear that because so many of us, we've been ingrained with a formula, especially if you're from an immigrant family. Yeah,
I
go ahead.
really had to sit with it because I'm like, I love my parents. I love my mom. My mom has been my role model. And, for most of my developmental years, I saw her as an emergency psych nurse working double shifts. And, I didn't see my mom very often, especially for big holidays and what have you, because she had to choose between, is she going to go to work on Christmas or New Year's? Like it had to be one of
Mm.
those really tough decisions. And I had to sit with myself of like, I love my mom. I love what she did to raise our family. But does it serve me to be away from my family at this point in my life, and that I don't need to? I don't have the same financial demands maybe, or the same motivations as my mom at the time that she was raising us, because my priority is to be around my family, because I have the luxury, I feel called to be around more. And so actually that, the pandemic has been meaningful on multiple fronts. Horrible in many, because it took us away from our, in-person opportunity, in-person connections for a chunk of time. But it made me really reflect what is really important for me. What are my priorities? With a small human in my life right now, being around for her is my utmost important thing. Making sure I'm still able to develop myself professionally is crucial. But in this season, it is not to supersede my wish to be around her while she still likes me, while she still thinks I'm possibly cool to hang out with. I want to be around. So that has been a significant reason why I have career shifted into immigration work, because it is work that I can do from home and still be of service to my community and to be of service to my ecosystem, and still be able to balance the responsibilities of being at home with my kid when she needs me.
This is interesting because how do you know what's important to you?
That deeply comes, I think, from reflection, and we have to stop autopilot. We can't, and I've been on autopilot since, I would say easily before 2017, but there's just that. And I think, coming from same cultural background of like, you just go, you do what you got to do, you make the money, you get the prestige or the titles or what have you. But for me personally, pandemic helped me press pause, figuratively and literally, to see what is going on inside and what is really important for me and for my family and for where we are at. My kid's not going to need me forever, so this is what I'm prioritizing right now as my activity. So I think it comes back to like listening, like really listening of what is crucial and what fills your bucket, what fills your personal and professional needs.
Okay, so I'm going to ask too. Uh, what does it feel like when you don't listen to what's important to you, and what does it feel like when you do?
I'll start with the positive first. When I've been in activities that really align with what I'm supposed to be doing, there is just like an inner, like a thread. I don't know what it is, but just something that fills me inside, that just there's no hesitation that I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Those moments have been very stark in my mind. So I guess it's partially in reflection, but in the moment, I felt it. So one recollection is when I returned to in-person teaching, May 11th, 2022. It is like another date that's marked in my brain forever, because I was at the stairway heading up to my office, and I think I burst into tears. I was alone. No one was there to see it, but just the sense of like, I'm supposed to be here right now. I'm supposed to be a teacher to post-degree diploma students who are internationally trained professionals, international students. I am supposed to be here, and I'm supposed to be experimenting with ungrading. I'm supposed to blow up everything that I've known of how I've been teaching up until the pandemic, and recognizing we cannot go back to exactly how we did things, and I am the person who is supposed to be here. So that was a moment where I felt like this is absolutely in alignment with where I'm supposed to be. When things aren't in alignment, for me personally, it might show up as emotional eating. It might show up as really being in autopilot and not really listening to my body or my feelings, or all of the things that might be deemed as wooey stuff, maybe. But I think that, paying attention to that has served me well. So I am reminded to go back to those moments of like, there's like a tightness, or there's an inner body feeling of like, something's not totally right. Why am I feeling or behaving in a way that doesn't feel totally in alignment.
There's a gap between the March 2020 and the May 2022, right? Or 20, I think it's 22,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
There's a gap, right?
Yes.
What's that like, that journey for you, those 2 years?
That's an interesting question. I think, like many folks who we've come through the pandemic, there were moments of like dark and concern of like what does the future hold, especially for those of us who have children, just a sense of like what will be the world for our children as they become adults. So there was moments of like really balled up in a fetal position and feeling sad and just wallowing in that for a moment. But there was also a moment of like there's a lot of interesting opportunity, there's some space for me to explore again, that the idea of like, okay, I can a career shift be in my cards? Is it something that I can explore? Do I have the capacity? Do I have the time? So that 2-year period was a moment of like chance to explore what does it mean working from home. Can I do it? Is it something that is comfortable? Is it something that I can do successfully? So that was what the 2 years gave me. Space to think.
Space to think. So during that time until, so from 2020, there's this moment where you have a realization that this isn't for me, but you don't know what's for you yet, right? And then somewhere along that journey, until you get there in May 2022, you figured it out. Is there a level of discomfort that you experienced during that gap?
Hmm. Well, I mean, I wanted to also point out something. So in 2018, I was attending a party, and that was when I first heard about immigration consulting as a potential professional anything. Like I mean, you're a child of immigrants. Our parents are immigrants, so I knew that immigration was a thing. We are a product of it, but I didn't know that there was such a profession that helped to guide people in to Canada and to facilitate the way. So at a party, randomly meet an immigration consultant, and she planted the seed. 2018, I was about to just give birth to my kid. I was like a year into my master's program. I had no capacity to take on other studies or to develop the idea of like, oh, what is this professional, career shift? Fast forward into the pandemic as I was finishing my master's program and realizing I think I will have capacity shortly after I finish my master's to investigate if this career path potentially could be the right match for me. So there was a planted seed from like years
Okay.
ago. It like stayed dormant for a chunk of time because I did not have the capacity to even think about it until the circumstances changed. And so it's not necessarily discomfort that I would say triggered the idea of like, is it time to career shift, but just capacity change that allowed me to like, oh, okay, maybe I can think about this new thing at this time. This is the season that I can think about it.
And often enough, then we're not alone, right? You have a family, you have a partner. What kind of role does those people in your life play during a transition?
Excellent question. I would not be able to do all of this exploration and following my curiosity without the amazing partnership of my husband. So to be able to have the capacity and the freedom and the luxury to explore, I'm hugely dependent on his capacity and availability to support me in these endeavors. So yeah, it plays a huge role because we have to support each other in different ways. During his period of finishing off his PhD, I'd just given birth, and so he had taken. We shared our parental leave, and so he was able to take 4 months during our shared parental leave to focus in on finishing off his PhD, getting ready for his defense, all of that. So give and take. Like I would not be able to do all of this
Ah,
without a good partnership. And so finding or having the right partner in our lives to allow for that capacity building or whatever exploration is massive. So great question. Really, really good point, and allows me to applaud my husband for being awesome.
shout out to Hannah's husband there,
Andrew.
Andrew. Okay. Thank
Mm-hmm.
you, Andrew. The reason why I asked that question is because a lot of people are afraid to make the change.
Yes.
And often enough, it's tough enough to do it internally yourself. But if you've even if you've convinced yourself, it's hard if your partner's not in a space
Yeah,
where they're ready for it, you know?
agreed. Agreed.
Uh, I guess the timing was right for you in some ways. That helped.
Hugely. Just to echo what you said, like we might personally be ready for change, but if our partner, our spouse is not capable to support us, I think that would cause either rift or difficulties in the relationship. So it really is, a testament to, the partners that we choose in our life to be able to support us, give and take when it's time to be able to support each other as we explore other opportunities professionally. And so now I realize I've forgotten your question. What? To go back to your question, can you remind me?
Oh, no, I think you answered it. It's
Okay.
because the timing was right, and I think in your answer you kind of described that you'll know that the timing is right because of these things that are happening. So
And open
for the
communication.
audience.
Yeah, and open communication, of course, with your partner, your spouse, of like, I'm really interested to follow this, and I'm equally his biggest cheerleader and nudger of opportunities when things pop up that I think would be really great for him to explore. I'm like, hey, did you check this out, or is this an event that you're going to be going to? We're very different personalities. I am an extrovert and he is very much an introvert. And so we've had some really interesting conversations of where I'm like, these are great events. Why are you not going to them? Versus his style, which is really building a very tight community of his uh, colleagues and professional like-minded folk. He goes to these same people. He's built a very strong relationship with these folks, and that's who he stays in contact with. And he's not the type to go to events every day like I would. So it's very, it's an enriching partnership to be able to have these conversations of like, this is what I'm exploring, this is what excites me right now, and he will share what's on his radar or what he's working on. So there's that kind of symbiotic exchange between us.
Before we get to the tradition that we have on this podcast, which is to impart some wisdom that you learn, I do want to ask you one more thing. I have guests that like when I've given the chance, I've asked the same questions in the prep to the call, and their answers, some of them, their answers are very personal. Some of them, their answers are very professional. But for you, it seems like the professional and the personal are intertwined a lot. Is there any insight on that, or any opinion that you have on that?
That's a very interesting question. I have been, scanning LinkedIn. You know that if I had another address, my other address would be LinkedIn. I am there. I am on there on this
Yeah.
particular platform very often. So I'm intrigued to see, how do people show up? Where do they, do they show the intersection between professional and private life, or is it strictly professional? And so it's interesting to see the trend on LinkedIn and how that's kind of, it feels like it's shifting to be more of truly like a social media, like not quite Instagram, not quite Facebook, but there's some kind of shift going on culturally on LinkedIn. Those who are successful, it's hard to say, do they compartmentalize and only talk about their professional lives on in different spaces, or do they show their humanity and showing a little balance between the two? It's hard for me to answer that particular question that you're asking, Mark, because I've tried to just be one thing or just to be professional, but I feel like my personal and my professional bleed into each other. I think it could be maybe just me, I don't know, but I can't divorce the fact that, the reason why I'm shifting into this professional space now is because of a personal situation of like, I want to be around my kid. So to divorce it would be to deny the full picture. And I think we need to show up in our full, as much as we can, in our full selves, in our workplace as well as in our personal life. Because if I'm going to be working on future files, I'm going to have to find the way to balance that with whatever extracurricular activities or school things that my kid needs. So to divide that would be disingenuous, would be inauthentic. I that's my personal take. I can't totally divorce them from each other.
I think that's a great answer. Because I'll leave you with this part before we move on to the overarching wisdom section. It's just I never bought into the fact that people believe that they're one person at work and they're one person at home. I've never bought into that. It's always the same person, and
Mhm.
you tend to show uh, one particular aspect in that environment versus that one.
Sure.
But one person, you know?
It would feel too disconnected if we said we show up in one place. I mean, we don't show our entire selves. That would be probably too much information, and it may not make sense in a professional space all the time. Like there has to be a little bit of division, but at the same time, like I can't, if there's something happening at home and it's sitting in my brain, I will try to compartmentalize it. But if it's
Mm,
keeping me from focusing on the task at hand for my work environment, I think the only way to serve my work is if I need to take half a day break or something, to whatever time needed to give, the other aspect that's pulling my distraction away, like to focus on it, take care of it, serve it, and whatever, and then be able to give my full self back to the work environment. I think there has to be a balance where one person, so I'm glad that you're also the same school of thought, that you are one being, multifaceted, different aspects of you will show up, but you are the same person. Agreed.
absolutely. Uh, Hannah, if you could tie this entire set of experiences that you've had given to us today, what's the overarching wisdom or advice that you'd give to the audience?
The biggest one, you are not alone, and to seek out community. So that's kind of a two-parter, but I think it's goes hand in hand. You are not alone, find community.
Okay, good, good. Thank you very much for that, Hannah. Very simple, but very powerful, what you just said. I appreciate that.
And I think it applies to everybody in the sense of newcomers, career shifters, those who are already professionally established. You shouldn't stop networking. You should continue networking forever, even into retirement. So that's my hope. It's a nugget that encapsulates everything.
Says the extrovert. So
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, yeah. Network in whatever shape looks like for you, but never stop being curious. Never stop asking questions.
absolutely. Hannah, one last thing I want to ask you before we go. If someone watches this
Mhm.
and they are moved by your story and they want to know more, or you know what, you're just someone who they're an immigrant and they need some help, some advice. How do they find you? How do they reach you?
They would find me on LinkedIn. I am there. I am posting if I share anything interesting. So you'd find me at on LinkedIn. I haven't memorized my LinkedIn URL, but Hannah Flostrand. There is only one of me, so you can find me there.
Good. I will definitely put your
Thank you.
URL, LinkedIn URL, in there in the when we post it on YouTube and all the platforms as well.
Awesome.
Tag you as well, so you can they'll find their way to you.
Mark, this is such a again an honor to be called upon by you to participate and to help. And is there anything I can do to help you right now?
We'll talk after.
Okay. All right, sounds good.
Yeah, I'm sure there's something down the line. But I want to thank you, Hannah. You have been a wonderful guest, a wonderful presence. I have no doubt that your sunshine will shine through on this podcast, and I hope that people do find you. I hope that they help themselves by reaching out to you and help you fulfill your purpose, your meaning, your.
That is the hope, Mark. Thank you so, so much. I really, really appreciate this.
Well, thank you very much, Hannah. We're gonna sign off now and have a great day.
Thank you. You too.
Take care.
All right.
Hey, thank you very much. If you made it this far to the end of the podcast, I really want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. You know, we're just starting out, so it would help if I could just ask one more thing of you. Please subscribe to this channel and share the podcast, share the episode on any platform you can. It would mean a lot to me and it would help us a lot. Thank you.